Lola froze in the doorway of her room, her heart slamming against her ribs as she stared at the impossible sight before her. There, lying over her bed in a blood-splattered designer suit, unconscious, was Kang Do-jun, the man they whispered about in the servant corridors, the Korean Mafia boss who ruled this mansion like a kingdom of shadows. For months, she'd scrubbed his marble floors, prepared his meals with hands that trembled slightly, and perfected the art of being invisible. He'd never looked at her. Not once. Never acknowledged her existence beyond curt instructions delivered to the air beside her head. But now, unconscious and vulnerable, he'd invaded her only sanctuary. His usually perfect silver-grey hair was disheveled, falling across his forehead. His jaw was clenched even in sleep, as if he couldn't stop fighting even in dreams. The scent of expensive whiskey hung heavy in the small room, mixed with something metallic. Blood. Not fresh, but dried into the fabric of his $1,000 suit. But how did Seoul's most feared crime lord end up in his housekeeper's bed? And why would this single night seal both their fates in blood and obsession? If you're ready for a dark love story that will consume you, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. Comment below what country you're watching from and drop a heart if you're already hooked. Let's build this community together. Earlier that day, Kang Do-jun stood in the basement of his glass mansion on Gangnam's most exclusive street, watching the light fade from Jae-sung's eyes. His most trusted lieutenant. His childhood friend. The man who'd stood beside him through every blood-soaked step of building this empire. The traitor. "I'm sorry," Jae-sung had gasped, blood bubbling at his lips. "The Russians, they said they'd kill my family if I didn't." Do-jun had pulled the trigger anyway. Because in his world, explanations didn't erase betrayal. In his world, weakness got you killed. But as Jae-sung's body slumped forward, Do-jun felt something crack inside his chest. Something he'd thought died 15 years ago when he was 16 and had buried his father, or what was left of him after his uncle's betrayal. At 31, Do-jun commanded the Kang crime syndicate with an iron fist wrapped in expensive Italian leather. Arms deals that moved through 3 continents. Underground casinos that never closed. Protection rackets that kept half of Seoul's business district running smoothly. He was feared, respected, and utterly alone. The dragon tattoo that crawled up his neck was supposed to represent power, rebirth, dominance. But lately, when he looked in the mirror, all he saw was the monster his mother had molded him into. "You're just like your father, a coward," she'd said the day she abandoned him to boarding school in Switzerland. "You'll die alone and weak, Do-jun." Just like he did. He'd spent 13 years proving her wrong. Do-jun climbed the stairs from the basement, his hands steady despite what he'd just done. Vincent, his driver, was waiting. The mess Jae-sung's betrayal caused was going to bring a lot of trouble. And his mother, the true power behind the Kang throne, was arriving from Busan in 2 days to assess the situation. Which meant she was coming to remind him that he was still her weapon, still her puppet, still the tool she'd sharpened on a whetstone of blood and betrayal. By midnight, Do-jun found himself at Keloq's, Seoul's most exclusive nightclub, drowning his failure in bottles of whiskey that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Business associates tried to make conversation, but he waved them away with a look that could cut glass. His father's last words echoed in his memory, words he'd overheard the night before the murder. "I want out, Sujin. I want to take Do-jun and disappear. Start over. Be a real father before it's too late." His mother's response had been laughter. Cold, brittle laughter. 3 days later, his father was dead, and his uncle was blamed. Do-jun had taken his revenge at 18, quick and brutal. Only now, 13 years later, did he wonder if he'd punished the wrong man. "Sir, I think we should get you home," Vincent suggested around 2 a.m., finding Do-jun slumped over the VIP table, an empty bottle dangling from his fingers. The ride home was a blur of Seoul's neon lights and Do-jun's bitter thoughts. He'd built everything to prove he wasn't weak, that he could survive anything, that he was stronger than the love that had destroyed his father. But tonight, covered in Jae-sung's blood and drowning in expensive liquor, he felt like the scared 18-year-old boy who'd had to become a monster to survive. Vincent half carried him into the mansion, but somewhere between the elevator and his master suite on the 2nd floor, Do-jun's intoxicated mind made a fatal wrong turn. Instead of his luxurious bedroom with its king-sized bed and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Han River, he stumbled into the servants' quarters on the 3rd floor. Into Lola's room. He collapsed onto her bed, fully clothed, and for the first time in 15 years, Kang Do-jun surrendered to unconsciousness without checking the locks on his door. Lola had returned from her night shift at a small printing shop in Seoul at 3 a.m., exhausted but grateful for the extra income. Everyone mattered when your 19-year-old half-sister was fighting an autoimmune disease that was slowly destroying her body. Chisholm's latest treatment had cost 3 million won. The next one, due in 2 weeks, would cost 5 million. Lola's salary as Do-jun's housekeeper barely covered the basics, which was why she worked 2 jobs, slept 4 hours a night, and hadn't had a full meal in 3 days. But Chisholm was all she had left. Their mother had died of cancer 2 years ago, leaving Lola to raise a teenage girl in a foreign country, navigating a healthcare system she barely understood and a language that still tangled on her tongue when she was tired. Which was always. She'd come to Seoul with dreams of becoming a graphic designer, with a portfolio full of vibrant designs and a scholarship offer to Hongik University. But dreams didn't pay for immunosuppressants and hospital beds and the endless tests that doctors ordered with sympathetic smiles and devastating price tags. So she'd become invisible instead. The quiet housekeeper who cleaned up after a monster, who prepared meals he barely touched, who listened to conversations in Korean and pretended she didn't understand every word. Because understanding Korean, truly understanding it, not just the basics, gave her an advantage in a house full of secrets. She'd learned it for Chisholm's medical appointments, spent 2 years studying until she could read medical journals and understand doctors' explanations and advocate for her sister when the healthcare system tried to chew them up and spit them out. But she'd never told anyone. Never revealed that she heard every whispered conversation, every muttered curse, every moment of vulnerability he thought was private. She'd heard him talk about the Jaesung problem. Heard him order the capture with a voice like ice. Heard him return to his study afterward and whisper a single word into the silence, "Myanhe." Sorry. Monsters, she'd learned, sometimes had regrets. All Lola wanted tonight was a few hours of sleep before her duties at the mansion began again at 6 a.m. She needed to be sharp, invisible, perfect. One mistake, one moment of visibility, and she'd be replaced like all the others who'd quit or been fired over the past 6 months. But as she quietly opened her door, expecting the familiar emptiness of her tiny sanctuary, her entire world tilted sideways. For a long moment, Lola couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. Could only stand frozen in the doorway, her mind refusing to process what her eyes were seeing. Kang Do-jun. In her bed. Blood on his suit. Unconscious. Her first instinct was panic. Had she done something wrong? Would he think she'd somehow orchestrated this? Would she be dragged to that basement Vincent whispered about, the one staff members entered but didn't leave? Then training kicked in, the nursing classes she'd taken before her mother got sick, before money became more important than education. She noticed his pale complexion, the way his breathing seemed shallow and labored, the strong smell of alcohol that filled her small room. He wasn't just drunk. He was dangerously intoxicated. She should call Vincent. Should get him moved to his own room where he belonged, where the Egyptian cotton sheets and climate control would make his inevitable hangover more bearable. But something stopped her. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the way his face looked different without the cold mask of authority he wore like armor. Without that mask, he looked human. Almost vulnerable. Lola set down her bag and moved closer, each step careful, quiet, as if approaching a sleeping predator. Which, she supposed, she was. She'd never been this close to him before. In 6 months of working in his household, she'd mastered the art of staying just out of his line of sight, close enough to be useful, far enough to be forgotten. But now, barely 2 feet away, she could see details she'd never noticed. A thin scar cut through his left eyebrow, pale and old. His jaw was clenched even in sleep, as if he couldn't stop fighting even in dreams. His hands, those hands she'd seen sign execution orders and stroke expensive car hoods with equal care, were curled loosely at his sides, and his knuckles were raw. Fresh bruises. He'd hit something. Or someone. Without thinking, Lola reached out. Her fingertips hovered inches from his cheek, close enough to feel the heat radiating from his skin but not quite touching. "What are you doing?" Her mind screamed. "This is insane. This is dangerous. This man orders people's deaths before breakfast." But her hand didn't withdraw. There was something magnetic about seeing him like this. Stripped of power, stripped of control, just a man who'd drunk himself unconscious and stumbled into the wrong room. She wondered what he dreamed about. If monsters had nightmares. If the cold, calculating crime lord ever woke up screaming like her sister did sometimes, haunted by pain and fear and the unfairness of a body that was destroying itself. Her fingers were barely an inch from his face when his hand shot out, fast, lethal, trained, and locked around her wrist. Lola gasped, her heart exploding into panic, but before she could scream, before she could jerk away, he pulled. Hard. She tumbled forward onto the bed, and suddenly she was wrapped in an iron embrace, Do-jun's arms locking around her like she was a lifeline and he was drowning. His face buried into her neck, and she felt him inhale deeply, his entire body going rigid for a moment before relaxing completely. He was still asleep. This wasn't conscious. This was instinct, some deep, primal part of him seeking warmth, seeking safety, seeking something human in the darkness. "Mr. Kang," she whispered, barely breathing. "Mr. Kang, you need to stay," he murmured against her skin, the word barely audible. In Korean. A language he didn't know she understood. "Don't leave. Not you too." Lola's breath caught in her throat. His grip wasn't painful. If anything, it was careful, as if even unconscious, he was aware of his own strength and was trying not to hurt her. His heartbeat thundered against her chest, fast and erratic, and she realized he was having a nightmare. She should push him away. Should run. Should call Vincent and let him handle this disaster. But she heard the desperation in that single word. Stay. And she recognized what this was: trauma response, seeking comfort in sleep, the body's desperate attempt to find safety when the mind was too drunk to maintain its walls. She'd seen it in Chisholm during bad nights. Had held her sister through panic attacks and night terrors and moments when the pain was so overwhelming that human contact was the only thing that helped. This man, this monster, this crime lord, this killer was having a breakdown in his sleep. And somehow, his unconscious mind had chosen her. This is insane, she thought again. This is the most dangerous man in Seoul, and you're lying in bed with him like this is normal. But then she felt his breathing begin to slow. Felt the tension start to drain from his body. Felt his heartbeat gradually sync with hers, calming, steadying. He was falling into deeper sleep. Peaceful sleep. The kind he probably hadn't had in years. Because she'd stayed. Lola made a decision that would change everything. She stopped fighting. Let herself relax into his embrace. Reached up and gently, carefully, placed her hand over his where it rested against her stomach. "I'm here," she whispered in Korean, knowing he couldn't hear her, knowing it didn't matter. "I'm not going anywhere." For tonight, just this once, she'd let the monster be human. Dawn broke over Seoul, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink that filtered through Lola's small window. She'd been awake for hours, watching Do-jun sleep, too afraid to move, too curious to try. She'd learned things about him in those quiet hours. That he talked in his sleep sometimes, fragments of Korean that painted a picture of a boy who'd lost everything. That he had nightmares that made his breathing spike until she whispered reassurances he'd never remember. That when he was truly at peace, a small divot appeared between his eyebrows, as if even in rest, he was puzzling through problems. Now, as sunlight crept across the bed, she felt him start to wake. His breathing changed first, becoming more conscious, more aware. Then his body tensed, muscles coiling as his brain registered that something was different. Wrong. Unknown. His eyes opened slowly, dark and confused, taking in details with the methodical assessment of someone trained to identify threats. The small room. The simple furniture. The unfamiliar ceiling. The woman in his arms. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Lola stared back at him, her heart racing but her face calm. She'd had hours to prepare for this moment, hours to decide how to handle it. How long? His voice was rough from sleep and alcohol, but there was no threat in it. Just confusion. All night, she answered simply, in English. She watched him process this. Watched his eyes travel over her face as if truly seeing her for the first time, cataloguing details the way he probably catalogued everything, filing information away to be used or discarded later. You should have left. It was a statement, not a question. You asked me to stay, she said quietly, switching to Korean. The effect was immediate. His eyes widened fractionally, and she saw the moment he understood, truly understood, what that meant. You speak Korean. His voice was carefully neutral now, but she heard the calculation underneath. Fluently. For 2 years. I learned it for my sister's medical care. She kept her voice steady, even though every instinct screamed at her to be afraid. Then I realized it was useful to understand what people say when they think you can't. What else do you know? The dangerous edge crept into his voice now. Everything. She held his gaze. Your business calls. Your meetings. The Jae-sung problem. Your mother's arrival. Everything. She should be dead. She could see him thinking it, running through options, assessing the liability. 6 months of secrets, 6 months of information that could destroy him, sitting in the head of a woman he'd never bothered to notice. Why didn't you run? He asked finally, and there was something almost vulnerable in the question. Because you looked human for once, Lola said softly. And I wanted to see if monsters have nightmares too. The silence that followed was loaded, dangerous, crackling with tension that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with something neither of them was ready to name. Do they? He asked finally. Yes. She didn't elaborate. Didn't need to. Do-jun's grip on her had loosened when he woke, but he hadn't let go. Hadn't moved away. And she realized with a start that he was studying her the way she'd studied him in the dark, like a puzzle, like something unexpected and therefore fascinating. What's your name? He asked. After 6 months of working for him, he didn't know her name. Lola. Lola Benson. Lola, he repeated, and something about the way he said it, careful, deliberate, like he was tasting the syllables, made her shiver. You're not afraid of me. I'm terrified of you, she corrected. I'm just too tired to show it. The corner of his mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. The first sign of humanity she'd seen from him while conscious. Then reality seemed to crash back. He released her and sat up, running a hand through his disheveled hair. Lola sat up too, putting distance between them even though part of her, a reckless, curious part, wanted to stay close. The blood, she said, nodding to his suit. Are you hurt? No. His voice was flat again. It's not mine. Jae-sung's, she didn't say. She didn't need to. You need water. And aspirin. And probably food, though I doubt you'll keep it down. Years of nursing instinct kicked in, overriding fear. Your BAC was dangerously high last night. You could have died if you hadn't stayed to watch over me, he finished quietly. Why? Because you're human. Because even monsters deserve kindness. Because I saw something broken in you that recognized something broken in me. She didn't say any of that. Because I've watched people die, she said instead. My mother. Nearly my sister, more times than I can count. I don't like watching people die. Even you. Do-jun stared at her for a long moment, and she saw something shift in his expression. Something crack and reform into a new shape. I need to go, he said finally, standing. He swayed slightly, and she was on her feet instantly, steadying him with a hand on his arm. The contact was electric. Both of them froze. I'm fine, he said, but he didn't pull away. You're not, she countered. But you will be. He looked down at her, she barely reached his shoulder, and she saw something dangerous spark in his eyes. Not threat. Something worse. Interest. Come to my office at noon, he said. We need to talk about your employment situation. Her heart sank. This was it. The firing. Maybe worse. Yes, sir, she said, dropping her hand and stepping back. He walked to the door, then paused. Turned back. Thank you, he said quietly. For staying. Then he was gone, leaving Lola standing in her small room, her heart racing, wondering what she'd just unleashed. At precisely noon, Lola stood outside Do-jun's office, her hand steady despite the fear coursing through her. She'd showered, changed into her cleanest uniform, and prepared herself for whatever came next. Dismissal. Threats. Maybe that basement Vincent whispered about. She knocked. "Come in." Do-jun sat behind a massive desk of dark wood and glass, looking every inch the crime lord again. Fresh suit, perfect hair, that cold mask firmly back in place. The only evidence of last night was a slight tension around his eyes that spoke of a vicious hangover he was ignoring through sheer will. "Sit," he said, nodding to the chair across from him. For a long moment, he just looked at her, and she fought the urge to fidget under that calculating gaze. "I've spent the morning investigating you," he said finally. Lola Benson. 27. Nigerian-American. Nursing school dropout. Sister in Seoul National University Hospital with a rare autoimmune disorder. Sending 80% of your salary to cover medical bills. Working 2 jobs. Perfect employment record. Never stolen. Never snooped. Never tried to leverage what you know. He slid a folder across the desk. Her entire life, summarized in neat type. "You're either incredibly principled or incredibly naive," he continued. "I haven't decided which." "I'm neither," Lola said quietly. "I'm just trying to keep my sister alive. And you need money to do that." "Yes." He leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. "I'm going to make you an offer. You can refuse, but I don't think you will." Here it comes, she thought. The impossible choice. "I need a personal assistant," Do-jun said. "Someone who can handle sensitive communications. Someone who speaks Korean, English, and from your file, Igbo. Someone who's already proven their discretion. Someone I can trust to be in the room when I can't afford witnesses." He slid a contract across the desk. "Triple your current salary. Full medical coverage for your sister, private room, experimental treatments, the best doctors in Seoul. Expense account. You'll attend meetings with me, manage my schedule, handle correspondence. You'll be at my side constantly." Lola stared at the contract, her mind reeling. "Why?" "Because you've been listening for 6 months and never used it against me. Because you saw me at my weakest and showed me kindness instead of exploitation. Because I need someone who sees the monster and chooses to stay anyway." He stood, walked around the desk, and leaned against it, arms crossed, looking down at her. "This isn't charity, Lola. You'll earn every one. My world is dangerous. You'll see things that will give you nightmares. You'll be associated with me, which makes you a target. And you'll have to lie to yourself every day about what kind of man you're working for." "I already do that," she said softly. Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe. Or recognition. "There's a clause," he continued, tapping the contract. "Everything you see, everything you hear, stays confidential. Forever. Break that, and—" "The basement?" she asked, her voice steadier than she felt. "No." His voice was quiet. "Worse. I make sure your sister's treatment stops. Everywhere. Every hospital in Korea. She'll have nothing." The threat was delivered calmly, without malice, like discussing the weather. Which somehow made it more terrifying. "You'd kill a 19-year-old girl to protect your secrets. I'd do worse to protect what's mine." He held her gaze. "But I'd also give her the best chance at life she's ever had if you work with me. The devil's bargain, served on expensive paper with her sister's life as collateral." "I need to think." "No," he interrupted. "You don't. Because we both know you don't have a choice. Chisholm's next treatment is in 2 weeks. You're 3 million won short. Without this, you'll have to choose which medications to buy. With this, she gets everything." He was right. They both knew it. Lola picked up the pen. "One condition," she said. His eyebrow rose. "You never lie to me. I don't care how ugly the truth is. I don't care if you think I can't handle it. You don't lie to me." "Why?" "Because if I'm going to sell my soul, I want to know exactly what I'm getting in return." Do-jun smiled then, a real smile, sharp and dangerous and somehow beautiful. "Deal." She signed. And that became the decision that changed her life forever. Lola served as his right-hand man, helping with various administrative tasks and sometimes an escort to places she never would have imagined going to. Is this what power looks like? Lola asked one evening, watching two men beat each other bloody in the ring below. Or is it just another cage? Do-jun stood beside her in the VIP box overlooking the underground fighting ring, his expression unreadable. He'd brought her here as a test, she knew. Wanted to see if she'd flinch, if she'd run, if she'd prove herself too weak for his world. She hadn't looked away once. Power is whatever you can take and keep, he said. This is just profit. No, she countered, surprising herself. This is men destroying themselves for your entertainment. That's not power. That's just cruelty with a price tag. He looked at her sharply. Careful. You said no lies. That includes me. His expression softened fractionally. You're right. It is cruel. But it's also what they chose. Is it? Or is it what circumstances forced them to choose? She gestured to the ring. How many of them are here because they need money? Because someone they love needs medicine? Because they're desperate? Like you. Like me, she agreed quietly. Do-jun was silent for a long moment. Then, I'll shut it down. She turned to him, shocked. What? The fighting rings. I'll shut them all down. Move the revenue to other operations. He met her eyes. You're right. It's not power. It's just cruelty. It was the first time she'd seen him change something because of her. The first crack in his carefully constructed world. 3 weeks later, late night in his office. It was past midnight. Lola should have gone home hours ago, but Do-jun was still working, so she stayed. She'd learned his patterns now. He rarely slept, rarely stopped, as if rest was an enemy he had to defeat. She found him staring at a photograph on his desk. A man who looked like an older version of Do-jun, laughing, his arm around a teenage boy who smiled like he still believed in good things. Your father, she asked quietly. He didn't tell her to leave. That felt like progress. The day before he died, Do-jun said. He'd just told me we were going to disappear. Start over somewhere safe. Be a real family. What happened? My uncle betrayed him. Had him killed to take over the syndicate. His voice was flat. I spent 2 years planning my revenge. When I finally did, I felt nothing. She knew exactly what that meant. Lola moved closer, settling into the chair across from him. That's a lot of weight for a 18-year-old to carry. I wasn't a child anymore. Children believe in mercy. He looked at her. You lost your mother. Do you ever wish you could have saved her? Every day, Lola admitted. I was in nursing school. I had all this knowledge, all these skills, and it wasn't enough. She still died. We both know what it's like to lose everything. Yes, she agreed softly. But I chose not to let it make me cruel. Maybe you're stronger than me. Or maybe you never had someone to show you that strength looks different than violence. He studied her for a long moment. You're dangerous, Lola. How? You make me want to be someone I'm not. He looked at her, with a hint of uncertainty in his eyes. Their bond slowly transformed as the days passed. And Chisholm's health slowly improved. Kang Do-jun was invited to a charity gala and Lola prepared to tag along as usual. You might be a target tonight, Do-jun said, watching Lola descend the mansion stairs in the blood-red silk gown he'd had delivered to her room. Stay within arm's reach. Lola nodded. She'd never worn anything like this. The dress clung to her curves like water, the color dramatic against her dark skin. She felt exposed, visible, everything she'd trained herself not to be. Do-jun's expression when he saw her had been worth it. The gala was held at the Grand Hyatt, a glittering affair where Seoul's elite mingled with its underworld in a dance everyone pretended not to see. Lola recognized faces from the news, politicians, celebrities, business moguls, all of them smiling and shaking hands with the same man who ordered executions before breakfast. Champagne? A server approached. Lola reached for a glass, but Do-jun's hand shot out, intercepting it. He brought it to his nose, sniffed, and his eyes went cold. Stay here, he said quietly, then turned to the server. Who gave you this? The man's face paled. I don't. Do-jun's hand wrapped around the server's wrist, and Lola heard the distinct crack of bone. The man screamed. The glass fell, shattering on marble. "I asked you a question," Do-jun said calmly, as if he hadn't just broken a man's wrist in a room full of witnesses. Lee Jin-ho. He paid me to." Do-jun released him and stormed off in anger. His eyes found Lee in the crowd, a Chinese triad enforcer Lola recognized from files. He grabbed a bottle of champagne, then dashed towards the unsuspecting man, smashing it across his head and immediately dropping him. The crowd burst into chaos and confusion, unaware of what was happening. And in the midst of it all was Do-jun with a shattered bottle in hand, staring down at the injured man on the floor. He turned to the crowd, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent ballroom. "Lee Jin-ho tried to drug my assistant tonight," he announced. "I'm making this very clear. Lola Benson is under my protection. Touch her, threaten her, even look at her the wrong way, and I will know. And I will respond. Tell your boss our agreement stands. But come near her again, and we're at war." The message was received. Lee left quickly. The party resumed with nervous energy. Do-jun turned back to Lola, his hand settling at the small of her back, possessive and warm. She was still reeling in shock from the. He led her away from the party. After the gala, Do-jun drove them back in tense silence. Lola could feel the adrenaline still singing through her veins, the fear and something darker, something that had sparked to life when he defended her so violently. Something about that made her feel seen and cared for, but his actions scared her at the same time. "You didn't have to make a scene," she said as they pulled into the mansion's garage. "Yes, I did. He killed the engine but didn't move. In my world, showing weakness is a death sentence. They needed to know you're not a target. I'd have done worse. I'm not some territory you can mark. Some freaking object you get to guard like your possession. I can look out for myself." He turned to face her, and the intensity in his eyes stole her breath. "I know," he said quietly. "That's why you're dangerous. You keep saying that." She sighed. "I need some space." Lola reached for the car door, but Do-jun's firm grip stopped her just before she could open it. "I'm sorry." Something shifted in his tone. "You make me want to protect something other than my empire. You make me care about how I'm seen. You make me human, Lola, and in my world, that's the most dangerous thing I could be." She should have stayed silent. Should have gotten out of the car. Should have maintained the professional distance that had been crumbling for weeks. Instead, she leaned forward. "Then be dangerous with me." The kiss was volcanic, possessive, desperate, and claiming. His hand came up to cup her face, gentle despite the violence she knew lived in those fingers. She tasted whiskey and danger and something that might have been longing. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Do-jun rested his forehead against hers. "This changes everything," he whispered. "I know." Do-jun's mother, Kang Do-jun, arrived like winter, beautiful, cold, and deadly. At 58, she was elegant in the way expensive things are elegant, all sharp edges and careful construction. Her black suit was impeccable. Her hair was swept into a perfect chignon. Her smile was ice. Lola met her in the mansion's grand foyer, standing beside Do-jun as he'd instructed. She felt the woman's gaze sweep over her like a blade, cataloguing every detail, finding every weakness. "So this is your new assistant," Do-jun said in Korean, her tone making the word sound obscene. "How exotic." "Mother," Do-jun's voice carried a warning. "Lola has proven herself invaluable to operations." "I'm sure she has." Do-jun's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Tell me, dear, how long have you been warming my son's bed?" "I don't," Lola started. "She doesn't," Do-jun cut in, his voice hard. "And you will speak to her with respect." Do-jun's eyes glittered with something dangerous. "Respect? For the help?" She scoffed in amusement. "Do-jun, darling, you're becoming sentimental. It's unbecoming." She swept past them, her perfume expensive and suffocating lingering in her wake. "That went well," Lola muttered. Do-jun's jaw was tight. "Stay away from her." "I mean it, Lola. She's more dangerous than anyone else in my world. Because she's your mother. Because she has nothing to lose and everything to protect." The attacks started subtly. First, Chisholm's treatment was delayed. A clerical error, the hospital claimed. Nothing serious, just a scheduling mix-up that would push her next infusion back by 3 weeks. 3 weeks Chisholm didn't have. Lola spent 2 hours on the phone, arguing with administrators, pulling strings Do-jun had given her access to, fighting the sudden wall of bureaucracy that had appeared overnight. When Chisholm's treatment was finally rescheduled at triple the usual cost, Lola knew exactly who was responsible. Soo-jin began inserting herself into Do-jun's operations. Every meeting Lola attended, Soo-jin was there too, undermining her suggestions, questioning her translations, making subtle digs about her competence. Perhaps Lola didn't understand the nuance, Soo-jin would say sweetly after Lola translated a Japanese client's concerns. The cultural gap can be so challenging for outsiders. Do-jun defended her every time, but Lola could see the strain it was causing. The tension between mother and son was palpable, dangerous, like watching two predators circle each other. On the 5th day of Soo-jin's visit, Lola found an envelope in her room. Inside were photographs. Dozens of them. Do-jun torturing a man in that basement she'd never seen. Do-jun standing over bodies. Do-jun signing orders that had sent people to their deaths. Do-jun's hands covered in blood. And a note, in perfect English, "This is who he is. This is who he'll always be. You're just a fascination. When he's bored, you'll disappear like the others. Or worse. Save yourself while you can." Lola stared at the photos for a long time. She'd known, intellectually, what Do-jun was. But seeing it, vivid and undeniable, was different. She thought about leaving. About taking Chisholm and running as far from Seoul as their passports could take them. But then she remembered the way Do-jun had looked at her when they kissed. The way he'd changed because she'd asked him to. The way he'd defended her even against his own mother. She burned the photos in her sink and didn't mention them to anyone. A week after the photos, Lola was working late in Do-jun's office, reviewing contracts for a new property acquisition in Busan. He'd gone to meet with the Russian contacts, trying to salvage the deal Jae-sung's betrayal had nearly destroyed. She was alone when Soo-jin entered. "You should have taken my advice," the older woman said, closing the door behind her. "I gave you an easy out. I don't want an out." Soo-jin laughed, cold and sharp. "You think you love him? How sweet. How tragically naive. Get your claws off my son. I don't think anything. I know what I feel. Do you know what he is?" Soo-jin moved closer, circling Lola like a shark. "Do you know how many women have sat where you're sitting, thinking they were special? Thinking they could change him? I'm not trying to change him. No, you're doing something worse. You're making him weak." Soo-jin's voice dropped to something deadly. His questioning orders. Shutting down profitable operations because they offend your delicate sensibilities. Defending you in front of associates who need to see him as strong. You're destroying everything I built. He's not yours to control. He's exactly mine to control. I made him. I shaped him. I turned a weak, crying boy into the most feared man in Seoul. And I will not let some foreign nobody undo 15 years of work. Lola stood, meeting Soo-jin's cold gaze with her own. "Then you should have raised a man who couldn't be undone by kindness. Maybe that says more about you than it does about me." The slap came so fast Lola barely saw it. Her head snapped to the side, pain exploding across her cheek. "Know your place," Soo-jin hissed. "You're an employee. A temporary distraction. Nothing more. I'm the woman your son chose. And I'm the woman who will make you disappear." The next morning, Lola received a summons to meet Soo-jin at a cafe in Gangnam. She almost didn't go. But something told her this was the endgame, and she needed to face it. Soo-jin was already there, sipping tea like they were old friends meeting for brunch. "Sit," she said, gesturing to the empty chair. 50 million won, Soo-jin said without preamble, sliding a bank card across the table. "Your sister gets lifelong medical care at the best facility in Seoul. I've already set up a trust fund she can't touch, but it will pay for everything. Treatments, medications, private nurses, experimental procedures if needed. She'll want for nothing." Lola stared at the card. 50 million won. More money than she'd see in a decade. In exchange, she asked quietly, Knowing this wasn't out of kindness. You leave. Tonight. Disappear from Do-jun's life completely. No goodbyes. No explanations. Just gone. He'll come looking for me. Not if you make him hate you first. Soo-jin pulled out a piece of paper. Write this exactly as I tell you. Tell him you were using him. That you got what you needed, your sister's care, and now you're done. Break his heart, Lola. Make him believe it was all a lie. And if I refuse? Soo-jin's smile was cold. Then I make a phone call. You wouldn't want her treatment to suddenly fail, would you? I've done worse for less. Lola felt her blood run cold. Don't you dare touch my sister. I'd burn down half of Seoul if it meant protecting what's mine. Your sister is nothing to me. A number in a hospital bed. But she's everything to you, isn't she? The trap closed. Perfect and inescapable. There's more, Soo-jin continued. If you refuse, I'll also tell Do-jun that you've been selling our secrets to the FBI. That you're an informant. A spy. You know what he does to traitors, don't you? You've seen the photos. He won't believe you. Won't he? I'm his mother. You're a woman he's known for 2 months. Who do you think he'll trust when I show him fabricated evidence? Bank transfers. Recorded phone calls with voice modulation. I have resources you can't imagine, Lola. I will destroy you, and he'll help me do it. Lola's hands shook. She clasped them together under the table, refusing to let this woman see her fear. Why? She asked. Why do you hate the idea of him being happy so much? Because happiness makes you weak. Love makes you vulnerable. And vulnerable men die in our world. Soo-jin leaned forward. His father loved him. Wanted to leave everything behind to be a good father. And for that weakness, he was killed. I won't let all my life's work go to waste because of some stupid African girl. Understanding crashed over Lola like a cold wave. You killed his father. Soo-jin's smile was confirmation enough. You let him think it was his uncle. Let him take revenge on the wrong man. You've been controlling him his entire life. I've been protecting him. Teaching him that love is a liability. That the only person you can trust is yourself. He was learning that lesson beautifully until you came along. Lola felt sick. This woman had orchestrated her own husband's murder and let her son become a killer based on a lie. And now she was sitting here calmly, threatening to do the same to Chisholm. Soo-jin's voice was steel. Leave tonight, or your sister dies tomorrow. And if you tell Do-jun about this conversation, I'll know. I have eyes everywhere. One word to him, and Chisholm's heart monitor flatlines before you can finish the sentence. Lola looked at the bank card. At the paper and pen. At the cold, calculating face of the woman who'd destroyed her son's capacity for love and was now trying to do it again. She thought about Do-jun. About the way he smiled when she challenged him. About his confession that she made him want to be better. About the kiss that had felt like coming home. She thought about Chisholm. About her bright laugh and brilliant mind. About watching their mother die and promising to protect her sister no matter what. Love meant sacrifice. Love meant choosing the impossible choice because there was no alternative. With shaking hands, Lola picked up the pen. Do-jun, I'm sorry to leave this way, but I can't continue the lie anymore. I used you for money and security. My sister is taken care of now, and I got what I needed. What happened between us meant nothing to me. I was always going to leave. Don't try to find me. It's better this way. Each word was a knife in her own heart. But Chisholm would live. That was all that mattered. Good girl, Soo-jin said, taking the letter. The car is waiting outside. You have until midnight to pack and leave Seoul. The trust fund will activate once you're on a plane out of Korea. And Lola. Lola looked up, tears streaming silently down her face. If you ever come back, I'll make sure you regret it. Do-jun returned from his business trip to find his office empty. No Lola at her usual desk. No sound of her typing or her soft humming when she thought no one was listening. Just a letter on his desk. He read it once. Twice. 3 times, the words refusing to make sense. I used you. Meant nothing to me. Don't try to find me. For a long moment, he just stood there, the paper crumpling in his fist. Then something broke inside him, and he swept everything off his desk in a rage. Glass shattered. Papers scattered. His phone cracked against the wall. Do-jun. Vincent burst in, alarmed. Find her, Do-jun snarled. Now. Search everywhere. Check airports, train stations, hotels. Use every contact we have. Find her. But even as he gave the orders, a cold certainty settled in his chest. She was gone. Really gone. And he'd been stupid enough to believe she was different. For 3 days, Do-jun became the monster everyone feared. He interrogated staff brutally, shut down operations to focus every resource on finding Lola, barely slept, barely ate. The search turned up nothing. She'd vanished like smoke. Until he started noticing the inconsistencies. Her personal belongings were gone too completely, too quickly. Professional runners left traces. Lola had left nothing, as if she'd had help. Her sister's medical files showed a sudden massive payment and treatment schedule change. Money from an anonymous trust fund that had appeared overnight. And security footage from the cafe showed his mother meeting with Lola the day before she disappeared. Do-jun stood in his office, the evidence laid out before him, and felt his entire world shift. Find everything on my mother, he told Vincent quietly. Every account. Every transaction. Every skeleton in every closet. And I want to know exactly what she said to Lola in that cafe. Sir, are you sure? Do it. Now. What Vincent uncovered shattered everything Do-jun thought he knew. Bank records showing Soo-jin had orchestrated the trust fund for Chisholm. Phone records proving she'd arranged to delay Chisholm's treatments. And most damning old evidence from 15 years ago showing that his father's murder had been ordered by his mother, not his uncle. She'd lied to him. Used him. Turned him into a weapon pointed at the wrong target. And now she'd driven away the only person who'd ever made him want to be something other than that weapon. Do-jun found his mother in the mansion's sitting room, drinking tea and reading the financial news as if she hadn't just destroyed his life. Shouting, "You did this," he said, his voice deadly calm. Soo-jin looked up, her expression placid. Did what, darling? Lola. You threatened her. Threatened her sister. Made her leave. I saved you from making a catastrophic mistake. You should be thanking me. All you care about is yourself. The roar echoed through the mansion. You let me think it was Uncle Jang who killed my father. Let me become this because of your lie. Soo-jin set down her teacup with careful precision. Your father was weak. He was going to leave everything, take you away, raise you to be soft. I couldn't allow that. He was my father. He was a liability. Soo-jin stood, her calm cracking for the first time. And you were becoming just like him. That girl made you weak, made you question, made you care about things that don't matter in our world. She made me human. That's the same thing as dead. Soo-jin's eyes blazed. In our world, sentiment is suicide. Love is a weapon your enemies use against you. I taught you that. I made you strong enough to survive. You made me a monster. I made you a king. Soo-jin took a step toward him. Everything you have, everything you are, you owe to me. And I will not let some foreign nobody undo 15 years of careful construction. Do-jun stared at his mother, this woman who'd birthed him, raised him, destroyed him and felt nothing but cold fury. You're right, he said quietly. I do owe you everything. My father's death. My isolation. My inability to trust or love or be anything other than what you made me. I owe you this empty mansion and this blood-soaked empire and this hollow excuse for a life. He pulled out his phone and pressed a button. Soo-jin's eyes widened as she heard her own voice playing back the cafe conversation with Lola, every threat, every manipulation, recorded by Vincent's surveillance team. What did you? I've spent 3 days gathering evidence, Do-jun said. Every crime you've committed. Every murder you've ordered. Every corrupt deal, every illegal operation, every body buried in the foundation of this empire. He walked to his desk and picked up a thick folder. And I've turned it all over to the International Criminal Police. They're very interested in the Kang syndicate. Especially when the evidence comes from the inside. Sujin's face went white. You wouldn't. I already did. They're coming for you. For your political allies. For everyone in your web of corruption. He met her eyes. I negotiated immunity for myself in exchange for testimony. I'm getting out, Mother. And I'm taking you down with me. You're destroying everything I built. You destroyed everything I could have been. Do-jun's voice cracked. I could have been loved. I could have been happy. I could have been the man my father wanted me to be. But you took that from me. So now I'm taking everything from you. Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. Do-jun, please. Don't. He turned away. Don't say my name. Don't pretend you love me. You loved your empire. I was just another asset. Another weapon. Well, congratulations, Mother. Your weapon finally broke. The police burst through the doors. Sujin was arrested along with Park Ji-won, the politician she'd been working with. They dragged them both away in handcuffs while Do-jun watched from the window, feeling nothing but emptiness. He'd destroyed his mother's empire. Exposed her crimes. Saved himself from prison. But none of it mattered without Lola. Do-jun knew Lola would see the news. The arrest of Kang Soo-jin and the Park family made international headlines. Korean crime queen fallen, the papers proclaimed. Empire crumbles from within. But Lola didn't come to him. Didn't call. Didn't reach out. Pride, probably. Or fear. Or maybe she really had meant those words in the letter, and he was just another mark she'd successfully conned. No. He knew her too well now. Knew the way she cared too much, loved too deeply, sacrificed too readily. His mother had forced that letter. Which meant Lola thought she was protecting him by staying away. He couldn't let her keep sacrificing herself. So he did the only thing he could think of, he played dirty. Lola went into hiding with her sister and totally cut contact with Do-jun. Just a few hours ago she had seen the news about what happened and how his mother had been arrested. His enemies were going to be having a field day, watching his empire crash to the ground, with predator eyes waiting to pounce. She wished so much to have been there with him, to go through everything with him, but there was no way she could do that. She made a deal and she had to carry on with it for the sake of her only sister. She was staring at her phone riddled with unanswered calls one last time as she walked, when her phone buzzed with a video message from an unknown number. Her blood turned to ice. Chisholm sat in a chair in what looked like an empty warehouse, her hands behind her back as if tied. Her face was pale, scared, convincingly terrified. She was supposed to be back at the hotel where they had been, staying since she was discharged. You have 2 hours. Come alone to this address. If you don't come, or if you bring anyone, you know what happens. The address appeared on screen. Lola's hands shook so violently she almost dropped the phone. Every instinct screamed that this was a trap, that she should call the police, that Sujin's network might still be active even with her in prison. But it was Chisholm. And she'd already lost too much. Lola didn't tell anyone. Just grabbed her jacket and ran, catching a taxi that crawled through Seoul's traffic while her heart threatened to explode from her chest. The warehouse was in Seongsu-dong, an industrial area that felt abandoned in the fading daylight. She burst through the metal door, ready for violence, ready for anything. And found Chisholm sitting calmly, untied, holding a cup of hot chocolate. And Do-jun standing across the room, hands in his pockets, looking exhausted and desperate and infuriatingly, impossibly there. Are you okay, sweetie? Lola rushed to Chisholm, grabbing her sister's face, checking for injuries, for signs of trauma, for anything wrong. I'm fine, Unnie, Chisholm said softly, using the Korean term for older sister that she'd adopted. The realization suddenly hit her instantly. What the hell is this? Really? He didn't hurt me. You were in on this? Lola asked with confusion as she turned to Do-jun. How dare you? The slap came before Kang Do-jun could utter a word. How dare you? Lola whirled on Do-jun, and all the fear transformed into pure, incandescent fury. You made me think she was going to die. You used my sister, my sick sister, to manipulate me. You monster. I know, Do-jun said quietly. I'm sorry, I didn't have a choice. A choice? You could have just, there were 1,000 ways to, her voice broke, rage giving way to tears. You could have just called. Would you have answered? The question hung in the air between them. They both knew the answer. My mother is in prison, Do-jun said. The Parks are arrested. The threats are gone. You're free. Chisholm is safe. You have nothing to fear anymore. Do-jun took one step forward, then stopped, as if afraid to come closer. Because I needed to see you. One more time. Even if you hate me. Even if you never forgive me for this. His voice cracked. I destroyed everything, my family, my empire, my name, and I'd do it again. For you. Because you made me want to be someone worth saving. Lola stared at him, tears streaming down her face. All the anger, all the fear, all the heartbreak of the past 3 weeks crashed over her at once. You're an idiot, she whispered. I know. I should walk out right now and never look back. I know. His voice was barely audible. But I'm asking you not to. Please, Lola. Please don't go. Chisholm quietly stood, squeezed Lola's hand, and walked toward the exit. I'll wait in the car, she said, giving them space. The door closed. Silence stretched between them, heavy and crackling with everything unsaid. Why? Lola finally whispered. Why do you make it so hard to hate you? Because you're the only person who ever saw past the monster, Do-jun said. And I can't go back to being invisible to you. I can't go back to being that cold, empty thing I was before. You woke me up, Lola. You made me feel. And now I can't stop. Your mother said I made you weak. You made me human. There's a difference. She showed me photos. Of what you've done. Who you've hurt. I know who I am, Do-jun said. I know what I've done. I don't expect you to forget it or forgive it. But I'm not that person anymore. Or I'm trying not to be. You showed me there was another way. And if I can't love that version of you, if every time I look at you, I see those photos, then I'll spend the rest of my life proving I'm worth more than my worst moments. Lola closed her eyes, overwhelmed. Part of her wanted to run. Wanted to protect herself from the danger and darkness that clung to him like a second skin. But another part, the part that had stayed with him that first night, that had chosen to see his humanity when everyone else saw a monster, that part was reaching for him even now. Do-jun took a shaky breath. I love you. I didn't know I was capable of it until you. And even if you leave, even if you never want to see me again, I will love you for the rest of my life. You're the only good thing I've ever protected. The only right choice I've ever made. The words hung in the air, raw and honest and terrifying. Lola opened her eyes and crossed the space between them in 3 steps. She slapped him hard enough that his head snapped to the side. Then she grabbed his jacket and kissed him harder. The kiss was desperate, furious, healing. His arms came around her like he was drowning and she was air. Her hands fisted in his hair, pulling him closer, pouring 3 weeks of heartbreak and longing into the contact. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Do-jun rested his forehead against hers. I'm sorry, he whispered. For all of it. For what I am. For what I've done. For scaring you tonight. You're still not off the hook for pulling this stunt, Lola said. I know. And I don't forgive you yet. But I love you anyway. God help me, I love you anyway. His breath caught. Say it again. I love you, Kang Do-jun. Even though you're an idiot. Even though you faked kidnapping my sister. Even though you're the most infuriating, damaged, complicated man I've ever met. I'll spend the rest of my life earning that, he promised. You better. 3 months later, Lola stood in Incheon Airport with Chisholm and Do-jun, boarding passes clutched in her hand. Seoul was behind them. The mansion had been sold. The legitimate businesses had been restructured under new management. Do-jun had set up a consulting firm, teaching businesses how to protect themselves from the criminal underworld he'd once inhabited. Where are we going again? Chisholm asked, grinning. She was healthy now, glowing, her hair growing back after months of treatment. She wore a university hoodie from Seoul National, where she'd been accepted to study medicine. Abuja first, Lola said, looking at Do-jun. I promised my mother we'd bring her ashes home. Then, wherever we want. Do-jun had liquidated his remaining assets and set up scholarship funds for kids like Chisholm, kids fighting diseases that bankrupted families. He'd cooperated fully with international authorities, testified against his mother's network, and somehow emerged free on the other side. The man who'd been Seoul's most feared crime lord was now just another face in the airport crowd, wearing jeans and a simple black t-shirt, looking more relaxed than Lola had ever seen him. At the gate, Do-jun pulled Lola close. "I never thanked you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For staying. That first night. For seeing me when I couldn't see myself. For believing I could be better. You would have done the same for me." "I did," he reminded her. "I destroyed my entire life for you. And I'd do it again," Lola said. "That's what love is. Choosing someone even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard." As they boarded the plane, leaving Seoul behind, Do-jun realized he was finally free. Not from his past, that would always be part of him, but from the cage his mother had built around his heart. He'd spent 15 years being a monster. Now he had a lifetime to learn how to be a man. And Lola would be there to remind him of the difference. Did this dark love story consume you the way it consumed me? If you're feeling everything right now, the heartbreak, the redemption, the hope, smash that subscribe button. Comment fresh start if you believe in second chances and that love can transform even the darkest hearts. Drop your favorite moment in the comments below. I read every single one and love hearing your thoughts. Was it the first embrace? The fake kidnapping? The mother's takedown?